Public Sector Network is a social learning platform designed to help government executives to network, benchmark, and establish best practice. As a registered B Corp, we balance purpose with profit and maintain the highest standards possible for our customers, community, workers, governance, and environment. Our audience spans across 10 distinct communities of practice, showcasing the latest and greatest thinking from these sectors, from both your peers and potential partners. We freely democratize the information available and ensure our members can access it both online and in person to best suit their preferred learning style. Public Sector Network continues to grow our services, remaining committed to our mission of being the #1 trusted resource for government looking to move from good to great. Sign up and see what you can learn from your Public Sector Network.
Hello and welcome everyone. My name's Charlie Hamer. I'm one of the co-founders of Public Sector Network. And for those of you joining for the first time, we're a global community platform that connects government, industry and academia. And ultimately our mission is to foster collaboration, share ideas and drive innovation for better government services and outcomes. We achieve this via events like this one today, via our academy, in-depth research and our online community platform. So on to today. So today we're uncovering how AI can transform the public sector, bridging innovation with meaningful impact. The session is part of our ongoing focus on transformative technologies, and we're thrilled to explore artificial intelligence in the public sector today. So as we know, AI has the incredible potential to drive efficiency, enhance decision-making, and improve service delivery. But as with any transformative technology, it comes with its challenges and considerations. So we're joined today by a panel of experts with hands-on experience in leveraging AI for public sector impact. So please welcome Zen Van Loan, Division and AI Data Analytics Implementation Lead at the Texas Workforce Commission and the Vice President of the Austin AI Alliance. We have Nathan, Managing Director of Data and Analytics at the GSI Center of Excellence. Anthony Fisher, a local agency security officer for data governance and AI at the Colorado Department of Revenue, and also one of our PSN advisory board members, and Agata, artificial intelligence resident at the Department of Homeland Security. So each of our panelists brings a unique perspective, and together we'll explore how AI can drive meaningful impact and change in public sector operations while addressing key challenges and responsibilities. So today, before we start today, I'd just like to thank our supporting partners, Carahsoft, Microsoft, Granicus, and Primer. Their collaboration and contributions make it possible for us to host these critical conversations and share insights across the public sector. We're incredibly grateful for their support in driving innovation and learning within our community. So I thought before we jump into the discussion today, we were catching up about this beforehand. So talking around how does everyone learn and how does everyone keep abreast of the constant change or daily change almost with artificial intelligence. And I thought I'd start by asking our panel, and feel free, anyone to jump in on this one. How do you continually learn? How do you read books? Do you attend events like today? Do you take courses? You members of communities of practice? How do you keep pace with the changing landscape of artificial intelligence? Open to the floor.
Hey everybody, I guess I'll take it first. So yeah, I'm Nathan Manzotti from GSA. And yeah, the way that I stay abreast of the latest developments is, my work allows me the opportunity to learn quite a bit and stay on top of a lot of things. Running a training program that we'll probably talk about a little bit more in the session. And then outside of work, I also teach AI and machine learning classes, undergraduate at a Southern New Hampshire University. And then GitHub and YouTube, I've watched YouTube videos, I've subscribed to a bunch of good channels about AI stuff. And then, when they mention projects or GitHub repos, I like to pull them down and try to run them and try to change them. And, I think hands-on approach is the best way.
Great. Nathan, you're the top of my screen, so I'm going to ask you next. Sorry, Anthony, at the top of my screen. I'm going to ask you next. I've already asked you, Nathan.
Yeah. So I'm actually also involved outside of my work at the Colorado Department of Revenue. I'm involved with an organization called the GovAI Coalition. And so it's a group of about 1,500 different professionals across 500 different agencies across the US. And we share a lot of information with each other of different use cases, different projects and things that we're working on. So that's one area where I really learn a lot. And, it's all peer driven, colleague driven. So that's been really helpful. But we were kind of joking about this before the panel. One of our colleagues, Chris Kraft, who writes every day, every week, if not maybe every hour on the subject. So reading a lot of those articles on LinkedIn. I'm also subscribed to a couple different newsletters. Like if anybody's heard of the TLDR newsletter, I read that one pretty much every single day. So just getting bits and pieces here and there, and then learning from colleagues are really the two main ways that I learn more about AI and how AI is really impacting our public sector.
Great, thank you. And Agata, I think you're next on my screen.
Sure, I'm going to give you two quick answers. The first is a fun way for me to stay on top of things is listening to the Hard Fork podcast by the New York Times. If you haven't listened to it, it comes out every Friday. It's 1 hour. It's super light and fun to listen to. On a deeper level, if you haven't seen it yet, there is a Substack called Last Week in AI. They compile a set of resources across all the different sectors. They update it weekly, from federal, international, private sector, etc. It's a really good place to get in a little bit more deeply. And there are many other ways, but I'm going to leave you those two so that you all have some concrete things to look into.
Yeah, no, great tips. And Zen?
Here in Texas, we also have a really robust peer network for AI. We like the idea of Austin being an AI hub. So the Austin AI Alliance brings together other people who love AI and work with AI. So we're able to network that way. But also like with my peers here, there were all of the information and all of the boards, and of course teaching at Texas State University keeps my nose to the grindstone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. So we're going to jump into the first section, looking at around identifying and prioritizing AI use cases. So as we know, impact starts with focus. So understanding where AI can deliver the most value is the cornerstone ultimately of successful adoption. So again, I'll start with you, Zen. Let's go the other way around. So how can public sector agencies or government departments determine and sort of prioritize AI applications, and where do you look? Where will it have the most significant impact? Where do you start?
We started with a needs assessment is the first thing I would do. And the first thing we did was identify what the needs are. But then we jumped directly into where do we want to be. So we're not stuck with where we are and just we somehow meet in the middle. And then we do a feasibility, impact and feasibility study. And from that, we align strategic goals and we just start from there. So I start with small scale projects, look inward first just for security because AI was new when we first started doing this. And then one of the biggest ones that we did was looking at attrition rates. When people are leaving, and being public sector, you know exactly when people are going to retire or they're eligible to retire and where your gaps will be just as a projection, and start looking early at how you can negate that and use AI to fill those gaps.
Great. And Agata, obviously, huge organization where you work. What are some of the ways that you've seen throughout the organization, or how do you identify, AI use cases to implement and have impact?
Sure. One of the benefits of being in such a large organization is that, especially a mission-driven organization, is that we have the charge of developing AI that is critical to the mission at large. Therefore, we have 4 critical priority areas. within the Homeland Security. One is to combat fentanyl. Then we're also looking at cybersecurity for our nation's networks. We want to be able to equip the workforce to better execute on their missions. And finally, to have safer trade and travel. So those are the mission areas, or the critical areas that we have been told to prioritize as an organization at large. And so then essentially from a day-to-day standpoint, we say, hey, we think that we could use AI here in this spot. And we have an organization that promotes entrepreneurship. And we, as long as we can essentially build the case that it falls into one of those, into the mission and into the critical areas that the organization has prioritized, we can usually get a green light to go. So let me pass it along.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Having the clear vision to align then your initiatives to then support that vision is a great takeaway. And obviously, Nathan and Anthony, you guys are involved in quite large communities of practice, and I'd assume, which I know, that you guys see on a daily basis really good examples of AI use cases. But open to Anthony again. You're the next in the line for me. Where have you seen some of the bigger opportunities for AI application across the work that you've done?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of steal a little bit of a phrase used by the military of the whole slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So kind of taking your time to really understand where those use cases are, because I think a lot of folks, like, they love the hype of AI and wanting to use it and wanting to dive in, but you really need to take a step back and kind of look at that 500,000 foot view of an organization to understand really where your problems are. And so looking for those low risk, high impact areas. And through my work with GovAI, I've seen a couple really nice use cases that have come out from there. So one of them that I'll kind of bring to light is pothole detection. Again, sounds kind of like pretty low hanging fruit. I think every one of us in our respective cities, assuming, you're in an area where it snows. I think California and some of the other areas where it really doesn't snow, like especially Southern California, you probably don't have potholes really as big of an issue. But like me growing up in Chicago or where I live in Denver, we get snow and ice constantly. So there's potholes everywhere. And that's an area where you can use AI to go ahead and detect where there might be a pothole. And again, it seems really low hanging fruit, like, oh, wow, we could use AI to do all these other tasks and automate everything. But the value and the high impact on the citizens, I mean, if anybody, again, here who lives in a state or lives in an area where you've run over a pothole, you've gotten a flat tire, you've messed something up in your suspension or your chassis, like, that's a bad day. That's not a fun time. But, a Department of Transportation or a local authority who's able to implement a use case like that, it has a very high impact, especially in areas where there are a lot of traffic or there are a lot of people who are using that same road. So I'd say areas like that, again, really, really low impact, like low risk in terms of using it, because even if you send a crew out there and it's not a big pothole or not a big issue, it gets addressed. It still has somebody looking at it and addressing that issue, potentially to put, some asphalt or something over it.
Yeah.
So.
No, I like that. I think it's important to labor on that point, because I think high value and low risk is a great place to get started, right, with AI projects and initiatives for people who are just dipping the toe in the water and getting started. I was going to start a slightly different question for you, Nathan. Looking around specific frameworks or strategies or canvases that can be. Is there any that you would use or recommend or you've seen used to identify, high value or AI projects?
So in the Centers of Excellence, we're government to government consulting services. So we have clients come to us with problems, and then, we set up agreements with them and we try to solve their problems. A lot of times the conversation gets started with, they want to do X, Y, Z AI application. And what happens is, in exploring that, problem space, we sometimes determine that AI is not the only thing that they need, or that an AI solution is not the best fit for their problem, right? And I'm starting with that because a number of years ago, so in this like typical consulting work that we do, a few years ago, we created what's called an AI capability maturity model, and we use that a lot with our customers. And what that is it's basically the full stack from security all the way up to quality control and advanced analytics and AI and so on. It's a CMMI type of matrix that serves as a way to evaluate where organizations are based on a set of criteria for the full stack, not just AI, right? And so we use that, and there's a couple others like it as well. I really like the GAO's AI accountability framework, which is it kind of has 4 quadrants, and it's a way to take a proposed solution and then kind of see if you have all the different components, the data, the algorithms, quality controls, and I forget what the 4th one is, to tell you the truth, but I like that as well. There's a number of frameworks. But a lot of times it comes down to just non-technical breaking down the problem and then applying technical solutions to the different steps to solve that problem. Yeah.
Great. Well, it's a nice segue into the next question. So looking at successful AI implementations, as we know, success, as you just mentioned there, isn't just about the technology, it's about the people, the processes and to implement a solution to solve a particular problem. But so the question, which I'll direct to someone in a second, but what are the most effective examples of AI deployment that you've seen across the public sector, and what are some of the factors that contributed to that success? And again, I'll maybe start with Agata to see what's some of the more successful projects, what contributed to them.
Sure. I'll start with a more general answer, and then I'll zoom in.
Please.
So I've helped draft and push out 3 executive level AI strategies. Gotten a look at a lot of different strategies. I would say in general, there's like 4 things that you need for success. These 4 things are: you need to have a workforce that knows and understands what AI is. The second, you have to have a path that allows for innovation, because this is brand new. It's change management, bringing something that you want to be able to have in a low stakes environment. The third is having good infrastructure, because deploying a solution it requires maintenance, and that requires a lot of structures in place. And the last piece is governance. So those are the 4 key elements that all organizations at large need to have in place in order to have a successful solution come out. So to give you a more specific answer, at Homeland Security, we have a really awesome mission, to be honest. If you're not familiar with like our internal agency or internal agencies, or as we call them, components, we have FEMA, we have TSA, we have Border Patrol. So some of our exciting examples are, for example, with FEMA, one of the things that FEMA has to do is assess the damage on a house. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but I actually I started in AI like in the early 2000s.
Yeah. Well.
My dad is a math professor, so like I've been playing with algorithms for a while. My specialty is in computer vision. I love vision systems, playing around with photographs. The reason I set it up like that is this is a computer vision problem. It's really awesome to be able to assess home damage more quickly using computer vision models is an application that FEMA has deployed. Similarly, using computer vision, there has been AI to enhance images for combating child sex abuse. So we've been able to enhance images and use that to find more details. And it's surfaced, looking at the numbers here, it's surfaced 311 previously unknown victims.
Wow.
So, but in order to do all of those things, again, we had to have those 4 elements. We had to have the workforce that really understood AI, and that includes human-centric design to be able to decide not what the solution is, but also how the solution should be used, a commitment to innovation from our leadership, infrastructure to be able to deploy, and again, the governance here is really key. When you have these really types of problems with high impact, such as child abuse. So I will stop there.
No, absolutely. That's a great answer. Thank you for that. And Zen, how about down in Texas? Obviously, you got 2 hats there. You obviously work within a university, but also within the state government. Where have you seen good success stories, and what are some of the key factors that played in those success stories?
First, everything Agatha just said. I love the governance thing is the key for a lot of what I'm going to say. But one of the things that I love right now, TxDOT is doing some cool smart city initiatives. They're using AI for traffic and traffic monitoring and to identify when lights are holding you up. Don't we all hate traffic? And Austin's no exception. And it seems, again, just like when we were talking about, Anthony was talking about potholes, it seems like such a small thing until you're in the midst of it. But to minimize traffic, and when we realized that, when TxDOT realized that the traffic lights are out of sync, they can actually do it using AI in real time instead of having someone go out and actually fix it, which oddly enough is how most traffic lights work. So to be able to do that in real time with just a push of a button is lovely. They also are using it for broken down cars or car accidents to minimize the wait time when that happens, or understanding the potential for accidents and actually having a tow truck going en route to that location ahead of the accident, which is amazing. So I'm really loving those the smart city initiatives being used. I'm really impressed with, and of course, I would be remiss if I don't mention the automated benefits processing systems that are being used in Texas. We went from going from taking 30 days to process benefits in one state organization down to under an hour. So that was pretty impressive. Wow. And again, we're talking about just understanding just the amount of people, when we're talking about public sector, again, the attrition rate. We don't have the people that people have in private sector. And when people retire, they retire in groups. So just being able to make their lives easy as far as our customers, but then the people who are working here to help streamline what we're doing. And how we get it done, I have to admit that I defer to Agatha. That's exactly how I wouldn't change a darn thing that she just said.
No, well, that's an interesting take, how you managed to do that, because again, as we all know, I think we've talked about it already, is the technology underpinning, I guess, using advanced analytics AI often isn't modernized. So you must have obviously gone through quite a big modernization of your, I guess, IT infrastructure to be able to apply something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, everything I say is data and AI go hand in hand. One of the bigger projects that I would love to see is making sure that when we're using each other's information and finding out how we can streamline these things, is streamlining the data, making sure that we're putting in the data harmoniously, so everyone's putting in an information the same way, so we can utilize it to help our customers.
And obviously, open question to yourself, Anthony and Nathan. I mean, again, because the wealth of people that you have a chance to get, interact with in the alliance and the centers of excellence. Where have you seen some pockets of good success stories, and what are some of the like I said, I mentioned before, the lessons and that people can learn from those?
I would. Oh,
go ahead.
go ahead, Nate. Okay.
Okay.
So I wouldn't change much from what Agata said. I think that's perfectly the people, process, policy. Without those things in place, it's just not going to work. It's going to fall apart. I'll add one little piece to that. I've said this even to like folks who I've hired, I've worked with. I don't necessarily need the smartest person in the room. I just need somebody who's willing to learn, because a lot of this is very, very brand new for even us who are technologists and folks who are in the space. But we just need folks internally who are willing to learn and willing to change and adjust with AI. And kind of with that, I'll say, like on the data governance piece, especially, like I had a colleague that put a chatbot out on her public website for the public to use for policy permitting related activities and questions, which again, like probably makes some of us a little bit scared, like, oh gosh, you're letting the public interact with AI, oh no. And what happened was in their testing phase, before they actually launched, she's asking it questions and it's coming back with some what she had determined were hallucinations. When they actually went back and checked and looked, the AI had learned all of the policies and was actually pulling old policy. And so she had deemed it as a hallucination, but in actuality, it was really just a misstep on data governance and cleaning and making sure that it was trained on more relevant policies. So that's kind of a word of caution of where it, you really need to make sure that data governance is at the heart of this. But at the same time, policy is a great way to use this tool, especially interacting with the public, not allowing it to make that opinion of interpretation of policy, but to be able to look up policy, find information very quickly, because I think for all of us here, most of the things that govern our state statutes, federal statutes, it's 300-400 pages minimum. I don't know anybody that has the time to read 300-400 pages and interpret all that. So having a tool out there that I've seen amongst colleagues and some of the things that we're working on here in Colorado are really kind of policy related to be able to help folks find information very quickly.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think a really promising use case, and I'm sure there's products out there that address this use case now, is taking those troves of free text information and structuring and indexing that data using AI, which then makes it easier to look up and have more traceable generations and things like that. So yeah, that's just a note. And then in terms of AI use cases, so I forget who mentioned it earlier, but the kind of low risk, low hanging fruit optimizations, we see a lot of success in those areas, and even internally, like for my consulting teams, I built a little tool, really not a difficult thing, it's just a script plugin that allows us to, when we have like big reports with findings and we want to categorize them into different buckets and summarize and kind of do like a bunch of manual data manipulation on text, it's almost instant now, and it's free with locally hosted AI models. So so we've seen a lot of great stuff with that. But then through projects in the centers, we see agencies all across the government adopting AI in different ways, which are derivations on that same idea, right? So to mention just a couple projects, the Department of State right now, we're working with them to build up their customer experience office for consular affairs, and we're using AI to process some of the feedback, and we're exploring ways to use it in disaster recovery as well, or disaster response. But that work is probably in the future. It's like using it there. We did a project, a narrow machine learning more than AI project that we did with the USDA, I believe 2 years ago. At this point, we set them up with a prototype system to automate the grading of beef using a computer vision solution, and that was really cool because it, from a computer science like programming development, it really wasn't that complex of a solution. It was more about labeling the data, getting the domain expertise, and then once we got that done, it worked extremely well. You know, whether they put that into production, that's scaling that has a lot of complexity, is a much more difficult thing to do, right? But yeah, we see a lot of adoption going on. I think it's going to continue. In the AI community of practice, we have a monthly agency showcase series that we run, which we haven't done for the last few months because we had a training program that we were running. But through the agency showcase, we've seen a lot of agencies come and present some cool work that they were doing. One of note was NIST, National Institutes of Standard and Technology, came and presented about the work that they are doing to identify child sex abuse material in deepfakes. And so that was promising to see that there's effort to, you know, combat these tools being used for horrible use cases as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I could go on and on.
That's great. Thank you for sharing those examples as well. We've got a good question from the audience. We've touched on policy already, but we could probably refer to some guidelines here. But the question's around is around policy. So, what guidelines, rules should there be around AI, and what should be in your AI policy? I'm sure all of your agencies and departments have AI policies, and I think I've read a couple of them as well. We can maybe pop some of those into the chat and send them out afterwards. But just high level, I guess. I mean, for someone looking to start to draft an AI policy or rules and guidelines, is there a best practice that anyone would like to have a stab at of where to go and what needs to be addressed? Anthony, I'm going to call on you because you talked about policy. So
I had a feeling. I'll say one really good resource is another plug for GovAI Coalition. We get 1,500 different professionals across the public sector across the U.S. Encompassing about 500 different agencies. We actually just took a poll like the other day. So our numbers about a week ago were about 1,300. Now we're at 1,500, 500. So still just getting used to that a little bit. But we actually have a policy. We have a policy manual. We have a lot of different templates that are available for folks. And I'll kind of touch on a couple of the different just high level pieces. One being human centric. I think somebody had mentioned that earlier. One of the things that I kind of think about, like with our agency, with DOR, we started our policy journey about a year ago. It was, a couple of us were sitting at a presentation and I said, well, we probably should start thinking about this. We've already implemented data governance. This is probably the next wave that we really need to start thinking about. And one of the first pieces that we talked about was always ensuring that there was somebody at the helm, somebody is looking at the output of whatever AI had popped out and vetting it. Yeah. Kind of like to the example that I gave earlier on policy, where it's like, you want to make sure whatever's being spat out of that AI model is accurate, is relevant. So having somebody there to just safeguard it is really, really important. But secondly, the data governance piece that really comes into play here is the bias mitigation, making sure your data is tagged properly. Otherwise, it might be making connections to things that are just irrelevant or potentially harmful to others. And especially for folks who are in a use case like benefits or who are working with human services related agencies, like if you let an AI run rampant without that first piece, human in the loop, but secondly, having some bias mitigation ahead of time, you're going to come out with really weird insights, and it might really harm people or pull people out of your benefits pool who could really desperately use that. So I'd say check out some of the GovAI related stuff, but again, bringing it back to those two important pieces, human centric and making sure that your bias mitigation is under wraps from the start.
Great. Well, thank you. Just conscious of time, so I thought I'd jump on to the next question. We'll pop some more links into afterwards for Lacey there with the question to send some more information on policy and assurance framework. So, looking at challenges in adoption of AI, but overcoming those barriers as and when they arise. I mean, Agata, in obviously a very large organization, as we mentioned, and obviously a very public-facing organization, what are some of the primary obstacles in adopting AI and in your experience, and how what advice would you say in getting over some of those barriers? And if that doesn't apply because you got free availability to implement AI, but what have you seen in the past has become up as a barrier, and how have you navigated that?
So I will say DHS is, especially as you mentioned, Chris Kraft being our deputy CTO, our leadership has strong enthusiasm towards strengthening our infrastructure with AI, which is just really important.
Yeah.
I will say, like Homeland Security, I think one of the coolest things is like it's like people. I would say we are wary, however, for good reasons, because we've got this like really kind of like strong mission of like protecting the homeland.
Yeah.
So I think we take it very seriously, but I will say the enthusiasm is there and strong. So what are the, like, a lot of our barriers, I would say, like, when you think about like developing something, you're like, oh, a developer will say, hey, yeah, of course I can do that. I can like just go pull a llama model and like you know, do XYZ with it, and then we can get it up and deployed. We're a large organization. It's not that simple. We are a large organization that gets hacked or attempt at hacking. So we have to not only think about like, is this tool going to be usable, but what are the security risks of this tool? Like if I'm going to pull like a llama or an open AI model, like what are the limitations of how I can use this? What are the environments in which I can use this? Beyond just like, can I do this? And then to add to that, we really have to be very, very mindful because of the high impact of our use cases. Essentially, to say how will this be used? So to pull back to the example, like one example I didn't mention is that we're using AI to do detection of vehicles because we want to be able to detect fentanyl coming into the US, right? So like we were able to identify like a suspicious vehicle. That suspicious vehicle, it turns out, happily had like 165 kilograms of fentanyl. So, but the question is, how did we get there? Yeah, it's like a lot. It's like a super cool win. But if you identify essentially how do you cross that bridge from, hey, I can do it from a technical standpoint, to once I'm able to do this from a technical standpoint, how am I going to use the information in order to make a decision? So these are, to kind of synthesize that into a very cohesive, wrapped up answer, is difficulties arise less in resistance, but more in safety, security, and responsibility, and being very mindful in those three areas.
Yeah, that's great. I think having senior champions within organizations is super important, though. There's some of the stuff that I've come across where often AI projects fall short without that senior buy-in, and obviously you have that a significant amount of that, but everything else around ensuring, questioning, can we do this and should we do this, is obviously super important. And I was conscious, obviously, again, of trying to cover the question. So thinking into that, what you just said there, Agata, about ethical considerations and data privacy, because as we all know, people who, I guess, and rightly so, who don't fully understand, I guess, the ins and outs and the black box, shall we say, of artificial intelligence. But as we all know, it thrives on data, and with that comes critical responsibility and the safeguarding around ethics and privacy. So I'll start with you, Zen. And how do agencies ensure ethical standards and data privacy in AI initiatives? We've already touched on a few, are adhered to, especially when dealing with sensitive information.
Yeah. In addition to the human in the loop, and of course, adopting the privacy first design is key. But just understanding, one of the big things we had issues with was our early adopters. It's really great that our early adopters are there, but you also know, as you're starting to use AI, that you have early adopters that are just going to use it and they are not aware that they may be breaching security. They're causing issues. While we had 70-ish projects, one of the things that the first thing I did was make sure that we had a secure chat GPT like system that we could use that doesn't leak. That was the first and foremost thing, and the biggest and most important thing we did. In addition to all of our big projects and, working with Azure and AWS and Google Cloud and all that, but this to me was the biggest because most leaks come from human error. And so we need to just really just jump into that and accept it, and then start in the smaller part of how are the biggest leaks happening, and it's usually with individuals trying to do better quicker. And so that to me, that's the best thing to do. But AI for adoption, privacy design, conducting independent audits just to double check yourself, and just always just making sure that VPN requirement is there too.
Yeah, great advice. I thought we kind of go into some sort of final reflections and looking to the future around AI. And I'll start with you, Nathan, because you are at the precipice there, driving things forward in federal government as well. But what as we were talking about at the start, daily, hourly, AI is adapting and changing, evolving. New use cases, new solutions, new tools are coming. And as we know, that's going to continue to challenge and also provide opportunity for governments and the public sector. So what do you think is next? As AI evolves, what emerging trends, or technologies do you think will have some of the biggest impact over the next 12 months, next few years? Where do you see things going?
Truth is, I have
Big
no
question.
idea. Right? Yeah. Yeah, none of us know. But I think some trends that we can probably speak to, what I think is going to happen over the short term is that I think we're going to see more capabilities in embedded systems and edge devices. So that's an area that I'm watching. And I think, some kind of trends that speak to that is that, over the last year and a half or so, there's been a lot of progress in smaller models getting better. And I'm talking specifically about like generative AI models. But even those models are being used for other things than just text generation and stuff as well. And they're getting smaller and better. But then conversely, also, I think that there's as far as progress with like the large models, right? Because what's taken us here is just scaling transformer models. That's what's created the majority of the progress over the last couple of years. And I think we're potentially going to hit a limit where there's not enough data to do the next step. And so that's an interesting problem. That's space that's also good to watch from industry, is how they're responding to that. Because synthetic data can take it a little bit further, but there's limited predictive value in synthetic data that was generated off of the real data, right? Like, how do you get that? So there's that, and I don't want to make any endorsements. So I'm here in the federal space, but there's well-known products that you can look at where they've started to make different changes to, like give more time at inference for the model to think, and so on. And that's showing improvements. So in short, no idea what's going to happen, but I'm excited to see what does.
Great. Well, and Anthony, obviously you got your privy to conversations with lots of state and local government entities via the GovAI Alliance. So what are you seeing? What are you excited about, I suppose, or are you scared about? Or are you what are you seeing?
I don't want to be like the big evangelist and be like, back in the early 2000s of like bacon on everything. But like, I think AI is going to become a much bigger part of public sector work. I mean, everyone here in some way, shape, or form said it. There's a lot of states, a lot of locals, and even some places in the federal government where we are lacking human capital. We are lacking certain resources. And AI is a little bit of an easier way to trim those gaps or shorten those gaps. And so things like, meeting notes, something that's pretty low hanging fruit. Somebody now, if they don't have a resource or an admin to come in and take meeting notes or deliver action items, things like that. Now we have something that can come in during a legislative session and start taking an account of a transcript and then delivering some of those insights pretty instantaneously. But like looking at technology as a whole, though, and the way that we interact with it, I just want to note, I really agree with Nathan. I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation, a lot of embedding. And if I'm being honest, like putting on my investment banking hat, prior to this career, I was in investment banking and finance. I think we're going to see a big consolidation of a lot of companies being bought up by the Microsofts, the Amazons, the Googles of the world. So there will be these niche products just kind of embedded into already existing like email software or meeting software. So it'll be exciting to see. I don't know if we should be hopeful or afraid of it, but I don't think that it's going to be like Terminator or it's going to take all of our jobs. I think we're safe as long as, you know, we have that willingness to learn and willingness to adapt to technology.
And Zen?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Embedded for sure. Wearable tech, embedded tech, edge is important. But also just to say exactly what Anthony was saying, I'm not concerned. Matter of fact, we say where we are that we're not looking at AI taking over jobs. We're actually trying to make jobs better and easier. We have attrition, so it's not like we need more people. We don't need less people. So we need, but what AI does is allows us to get the mundane out of the way and allows us to do the important work. So that's what I love about what we're doing. Also, like I said, I'm writing AI management course right now because we need AI management leaders and AI management project leaders. So be great at two things. That's my rule for everything we do.
Great. And Agata, closing comments, points to raise?
I love AI.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like I have a degree in robotics. My dad, having a dad as a math professor, I've been writing algorithms literally since 1995, when the World Wide Web was released and creating our first HTML type of things. But I have a literal degree in robotics. So I've been on this train for a while. I think we're going to see, just like with the World Wide Web, we need to get our orgs up and running with this new tech. It's going to enhance a lot of our systems. As to where we're going to go from there, I think we're going to see a lot of agent-based systems, so a lot of AI interacting with AI. And perhaps I'm biased because I have a degree in it. I think we're going to start to see a lot more robotic systems. So not just like AI running on small devices, but AI running on things that move. I'll stop there.
No, great. A book that I've got on my desk is Ray Kurzweil's book around singularity. So that's, and I love AI too, by the way. So that's the one, that my latest one, for if everyone hasn't read that, it looks like a good one. So we'll see what he says. I'm sure some interesting stuff. So thank you very much again. I'm sure we could talk about this all day, clearly. So as we've talked about in the discussion, AI isn't just about the technology. It's about the change that it can inspire in public services, creating better outcomes for communities in our respective countries. So thank you again to all the panelists for sharing that expertise, and thank you to the audience for joining us today. It's clear that, as we said, AI presents both tremendous opportunities and challenges in the public sector, from identifying high impact use cases to addressing ethical concerns. Discussions today provide a strong foundation for that meaningful action. So at Public Sector Network, we're committed to supporting, obviously, public sector innovation via these events, training and research. So please do not hesitate to reach out if you'd like to have some information, continue conversation, and we'll see how best we can help. So thank you again, everyone, and hope to see you the next time. Have a great afternoon.